And before I get started too far into my painting, I want to try this to make a new wash. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we're going to try to just make a plain black wash. Hopefully I won't waste it. And then I have some isopropyl alcohol here. Mine's only 50%, but we're going to give this a try. And I want to go 2 or 3 times as much. Let's go very slowly. 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we're going to start with that. I'm going to give that a mix. And we're going to see how this does on a mini. Cat came in just as I was starting. Took 1 sip of water and then cried won't back out. So I had to let her out. This is doing okay. Probably should have put this more in the corner of the cup. I might try just a little more of the isopropyl, but I'm going to just do a quick test before I even paint down the wing of this phoenix and just see if there we go. It's not too bad. It might be hard to see on camera with it just being a black primer, but I can see it here, and it is wanting to flow down into the under parts and into the cracks. So that may be decently well. So 3 parts alcohol to 1 part of the paint. I'm going to try that. We're going to cover this up so it doesn't dry out, and then we'll get to painting. Another thing I did do to prepare is I took these brushes and I got them damp and I twirled them, and then if I had any stray hairs even at the tip, I got scissors and I just tried to cut it straight across, or the ones that were bent, I pulled them off to the side and then trimmed them just to get a little bit better of a point, get rid of some of those weird bristles. So I'm going to dab this off because I plan on painting over it, and I'll come back once I've got most of the base coat of this painted, and then we'll come back and show you how, if the wash will work, how it's supposed to look. Okay, it's been 20-30 minutes and I did 1 quick coat of the sand with ochre, the yellow ochre, and just spread it around. I don't want to get it super concentrated or detailed because we'll be going over that later. Then I made the riders wear red outfits with yellow like helmets and shoulder pads, and then the rest of this is going to be black later, but I've done 2 coats of the yellow and the red, and this one I forgot to do the yellow on it, but I do have 2 coats of the red. And then the phoenix does not have a rider on him, so the rocks I just did a little bit of the ochre and spread it around, and I'm going to try to make it look like flames coming down on the rocks and stuff, but I've done 2 coats of red so far on that, so it's looking pretty good. Except for the sand, I've got 3 coats of everything on there just for a base coat. This one as well, it's looking pretty good. I like this. I want the sand and anything like that that is not primary focus to just be real rough. I don't want it to be super detailed. And then the phoenix, I need to do at least 2 more coats of orange and yellow, but the red I think is okay. So we'll let this dry, do a couple more coats, let those dry fully, and then we'll try the wash and see how it does. So I've been painting a couple of hours. I haven't really done anything more to this one. I just tried to touch up the yellow on his hat and his little saddle there a little bit. Same on this one. I tried to touch up the yellow on the man in just a few spots where it didn't look like it was thick enough covering. I might have touched up. I mainly spent most of the time on this one. I think I've got 5 coats of orange and 5 or 6 coats of the yellow on the wings. And then on the stones, I've just got like, or down on the flames on the sand and stuff, I've just got like 2 or 3 coats. I didn't want it to be super detailed or perfect. So, but on the wings, I did have to go with several coats of the orange, and I extended the orange out on the tip of that. And underneath, it goes down even another wing. I really like the way it's looking. So I'm going to let this dry, I don't know, a few hours while I eat and take a break. But, so that's just a couple of hours of painting, giving myself and you like an idea. These have been drying for at least an hour, and kind of getting tired of just sitting here waiting. So let me get my glove on. I keep rubbing this primer off on my hand. That's better. So let's try out this new wash I made. We will mix it a little bit more. Now remember, this was paint and isopropyl. And we're going to see if this will work more like a store-bought wash. So, just going to lightly brush it on all over the model and then spread it down and out and see if it is thin enough to do the effect we want, and I don't think it quite is. I think it's just a little bit too thick, which is unfortunate. We'll try some more. Let's see. Let's try. It's not bad. It's just a little too thick and dark. It's not bad. Okay. So, especially on the front of, now which one was it? Okay. Especially on the front, it just gathered and pulled. But here it didn't do too bad. Here it didn't do too bad. So I think I'm going to try to dab off some of this. I'm going to repaint the neck and the body, let that dry. We're going to add some more isopropyl to it and see if we can thin it out a little more. So it was about a 3-to-1 ratio. Now it's about a 5-to-1 ratio. 5 isopropyl drops per drop of paint. And it does seem much runnier. So I'm going to finish letting the body of the bird dry. And I'm going to try down here on the flames that are coming off and just... and that seems to be working a little bit better. So what we want is for this to just run down into some of those cracks to create natural pooling and shadowing without altering the color of the paint too much. Now, of course, if it pulls up too much and dries, it will paint that area. But now, of course, if you like your coloring, your painting to be a little brighter and almost animated looking, then don't even worry about doing the wash. Just leave it the way it was. So now let's put that in my teeth. I'll come back in here and just dab. Let's see how this looks with the flames coming off of the phoenix, off of his body down onto the rocks and sand below. That is looking pretty cool. I still got a little bit too much pulling right in here that I don't like. Let's just do that. Under the tail is fine. Yeah, that's not too bad. It's not too bad. It's not as good as some professional store-bought, I'm sure. And of course, I'm not a great skilled painter, still learning, but I am fairly happy with how that is looking. So now we're going to get a few natural shadows under those wings, because even though it is a bird of light and fire, you do want some contrasts here and there. So I'm just gonna, now let's do the back. So I'm gonna put more on the red and orange feathers, and then I'm just going to lightly spread it out onto the yellow, very thin, and then dab it off down the back of the neck, and quickly dab it off. And that should give it some nice contrasts without having to do a whole lot of work. See, look at that. Look at that. Now don't worry about if got a little lint or something stuck there. If you notice here, got a little too much black or not enough yellow paint, so I'm seeing primer, one of the two. Not worried about that. We will cover that up when we do the highlights. We are really just wanting to make sure, I need just a little bit up under there. Again, this is not perfect, and this hand and this brush is not perfect, but that already looks pretty cool. I am really liking the way this is looking. We'll let that one dry. We will do another one. Let's just do another one on camera, show you what I'm trying to go for here. So if you notice, the scorpion looks pretty cool. Okay, and what I did is I looked up some references, and I did like desert scorpions, red scorpions, stuff like that, and found some real life inspirations. And I didn't worry about trying to separate this too much and show the underbelly and stuff. I just went ahead and did most of it red. And now we're just going to come in here and lightly paint some of this right over the body, right down the tail, just to break up a little bit of that perfect shimmer look that it had, give it a little bit more of a dirty, realistic look. And then I'm going to, again, just dab off a little bit of the excess, especially there on the back. Don't want it to pool. Now these miniatures are pretty cool looking, but I tell you, they are a little bit of a pain to paint. I have been reluctant to paint them because they're rubbery and I didn't want to break the legs, and plus trying to get up under all the legs and get all those little details. This is a very cool game, and this is some very cool miniatures, but I have been a little reluctant to attempt these guys for a while. Bit on him. Don't want to get too much on that yellow headdress. He is so small and his detail is so small that I'm not worried about trying to get these different paint effects on him, but just on the main focus of the miniature. There we go. Now that should create some natural contrasts in the colors. That does not look too bad at all. I think I'm going to force a little bit more up in here in these cracks of the shell where the tail is bending. And then along the legs. Now remember, if you don't want to fool with this step and you're afraid you'll mess up your paint, don't do it. You can, it will look a little more like a coloring book or cartoon with the bright colors, but that's fine. If you like the way that looks and it's nice and clean, then leave it that way. Don't fool with this. But this is just a quick way to add some shadows in places. Now this one has a lot of sand, so what we're going to do is, now that I got that just base of sand there, we're just going to come in here and really smear some of this on and let it get down in the cracks in case there's anywhere that did not get covered really well first time with the ochre. This time I'm not worried about it pulling because we'll take care of that later. I just want to see how this looks before I commit fully. Or do I want to go back to the way it was? This isn't too bad. Plus you would have more shadow because you have a giant scorpion blocking the sun on this area of the sand. So anywhere where it looks like you got too much, just paper towel dab it before it sets too much, yeah? Here we go. Let that one dry, and let's see what this one looks like. And this one, I think I'm going to, just in a couple of areas with the sand, a couple of the large crater areas, move some of this around. Yeah. And we're going to not do as much on this one, and then at the end compare the two and see how it looks. So this one we're going to be a little more selective, just to see which one we like at the end. Okay, then we've got this nice shiny shell on the carapace of this beetle, this rhino beetle. So now I'm just going to start here at the black of his legs and boots and just work on out. Don't mind if I get a little bit on the saddle. And we'll do that here. And then, now let's try this thing. Ooh, I really don't want to break the beetle's horn off, but I don't want too much of that black gathering on the shell. I want it to look a little bit shiny. Not super shiny, but a little bit. So now I'm going to wash some of that off and get the brush wet and see if I can't paint off a little bit where I got a little bit too much right here. There we go. Before it gets nice and dry. There we go. Now this one I do wish I had not gotten quite as much of the black. But it's not bad. It does give a little definition. So we'll let that dry for, I don't know, 15 minutes or so. And I may have to just, yeah, this is pulled up too much. Just move some of this around. I don't like it being that. That contrasting. Okay. We'll let that dry for a little bit and then we'll come back and try to do some highlights and see how it turns out. So what I'm doing is the elevated places where sunlight would hit. For instance, right along the brow, down the horn, above the eye socket. And I'm just putting a thin layer of paint in the original color, red, and just letting it dry. And then right here on the chest, where sunlight would be hitting it, I'm just bringing some down like this, and then where its neck is turned, right there like that. And then we're going to come right across the top of the wing. I got a little too much black there. Now I don't know if some of that is just poor painting or too much of the wash wanted to pull up there. So we will make that a little more prominent painted. There we go. On both sides. This one here seems to be like the seam in the mold, because it almost seems like there's a little lip right there that the paint is not wanting to adhere to. So I'm going to, there we go, pour some paint down in there and that'll help cover that up. So we're going right back in and repainting just on the top edges of some of the things. So like the wings, the chest, the horns around the eye socket, and then like the very top of the neck there. Just, and if you feel like it's got too much of a perfect line, just spread it out, but you almost want it to stand out. You want it to really stand out. And then once it dries, it will darken a little bit. And then once you put your clear coat on it, it will help. There we go. So let's go back over this again, just to smooth that out. And then come back over this one. And I tell you what, a little bit right there. Now remember, these are fantasy figures, and this is a phoenix that is supposed to create its own light through its fire. So you could, if you want it, go even brighter and do less shadowing. Do whatever you want with your model. Just paint. Just get out there and paint them and make them look better. Yeah? Alright, we're going to let that coat dry. Do some highlights on this one. So we're going to come right up here. Now I like the black being down in like the joint areas, But on the very tops of these, let's see if I can get where I can hold this and see. So right in here, and then pull that down some, and then right here. See if you can see that on camera. I'm not sure if it's going to show up okay. It's not bad. Now on camera it almost looks orange, but in person it does not. It's part of my bad camera, part of the bad lighting. Focus most of the paint right on the top. Right like that. And then kind of smooth it out a little bit to the sides. There we go. In this part, what you're trying to do is make it look like the sun is hitting it and making it glisten right there. It's catching the light and reflecting back into the camera lens if you were watching it on a movie. But by doing this, your eye expects to see natural color variations. If not, it looks too flat, it looks fake. And it will stand out more. So don't worry about piling on the paint. Okay, and now this one I'm going to go right here. Not as much. Maybe a little bit right there. Now that my brush is mostly dry, I'm going to paint like this. Try to leave a lot of that in the gaps. There we go. And now we will come back and pull some of this to the sides. Just to try to smooth out those paint edges, so we don't have a perfect straight line. Now that one I messed up. It was starting to get dry, and so then as I pulled it, it pulled some of the paint away. So we'll just repaint right here and then just blend it in on both sides. There we go. And then I think what I'm going to do on this one is the top of all those little joints. 1, 2, 1, 2. Just do the top two. Here we've got ridges on the carapace on the front, so we definitely want to highlight that. And then this arm is sticking up really high. So if I can get my hand rested and not move the camera too much, just got me a small empty box to help me steady my hand. Here we go. We want to just get a nice coat, even if it looks discolored right now. One way you can do that is if you get your brush perpendicular to where you think the sun would be hitting it the most, and then just lightly go across it and drag that paint right across that ridge, and then smooth it out, blend it out. And this almost looks like it's got another strange seam right there, so let's fill it in with some paint and then smooth it out a little bit. And you want to try and get this part shiny, like it is catching the sunlight. It's really going to make a contrast. You will have your base color that we did at the very beginning. Then you're going to have the wash that will create natural shadows, and then you're going to have this part that is catching the sunlight. So you're going to have three different textures of color, if you will, three different contrasts. Now this is kind of hard. It is small, and especially as you're turning it over trying to figure out where to put the paint, it may change on some of the horns. It doesn't have to be perfect. As long as you make sure that between in those V areas is darker. There you go. And then this right here is catching the sunlight. Now down in that V, leave that dark spot. Leave that. But right here, on the elevated part of the horn, go ahead and pile up some of that paint. Really get that color difference going. Okay. Now I'm going to get a little more paint on my brush, because this right here, don't mind if it has a lot on it. This is the top bit of the carapace on the legs that is really catching some sun. It has no shadow on it, and it has a nice hard ridge, so you can just pull the brush right across it to catch that paint. It's going to make a nice little contrast. Yeah. Let's get some more. Do the other legs. Remember, focus on the high points and the edges. The corners, if you would, the points that stick out. And you can see on this leg right here, see how it's got that elevated part right in the middle, and it's trying to catch a little bit of the light off of my cameras. So let's just help it. Let's just make sure it's got some fresh paint right across there. See? Now it's really catching the light, isn't it? And if you look at it from the side, see, it doesn't look as shiny. And then if you look at it from here, it looks dark. And that's what you want. That's what you want. It's going to give it a natural eye illusion. Okay. Then, on this one, let's see, I need to put a little bit more, I think, right in here. If I can do it without messing up my model. Oops, sorry, I shook the camera there. Really want to pile up the paint on this. Right here on this. And if you get a spot that looks too dark, has too much of the wash, and it didn't, the wash is supposed to wash down the model and settle in recesses. So if it looks like where you brushed it on, it might have pulled a little bit too much on an elevated spot, just paint over it a little bit. Do a thin layer of paint. Don't put it on as thick as you are on your highlight spots. Just do it thin. I'm going to put a little bit right there on the back of his head, at the top of that little plate on his head. Yep. That has already started to dry, so let's put a little bit more on there. I really want that to stand out. This time I'll do it a little bit of a wide coat so that it'll spread out. So it'll be more paint on the top and a little bit off to the sides, and it should give a natural blending effect. Yeah, look at that. Look how cool that's looking. Now remember, if you take your time and do several coats to begin with, and if you do decide to do a wash, and you're scared to do this, buy you a nice wash. Buy a couple of them. They have blacks and browns and flesh tones and stuff like that. And then it speeds up the rest of the process. It all starts with several thin, small coats on the undercoat. And you don't even have to do the wash if you don't want to. You can always let this dry and then come back in and paint some highlights like this and just keep working it and smoothing it out. So I'm making almost like a V here on the top. You can see that. Yeah, it's showing up decently. There we go. Oh. A little bit of a V. And what that is that's like where the sunlight is catching it. And then this part is getting shadowed by the saddle or his leg. But this part is out in the sun catching the sunlight. So I'm going to get a little bit more before I cut the camera. Let's see if I can't. There we go. I really want this part to stand out, because that is a shiny beetle's shell, carapace. And this is the edge of it that's out in the sun. Here we go. That is looking pretty good. Oop, I forgot to get those. Forgot to get those. I got that one, but I didn't get these. So just put a little bit there. Put a little bit right down that spiny part. A little bit on this. Just to make sure we get them, because I'm going to do another coat on all these. At least one more coat, maybe two. Here we go. That is looking really good. And like I said, these guys are so small, I'm afraid that if I get in there and try to do too much, it's going to mess them up. So I just left them very, very plain. Okay? They are wearing uniforms to show that they are the mount riders, but other than that, leaving them very, very plain. There we go. I think I'm going to clean up my brush, and it should have been enough time on the Phoenix that I can just get me some more paint, let this dry, and then put another coat on all of them. So I've gotten a couple more coats of red on everything. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking the yellow, the bright yellow, not the ochre, and I am hitting some of these elevated spots of sand. And I'm not worried about getting it perfect, but then I'm just spreading it around. So we want lots of different variations of color in here. So when it dries, we should have bright yellow and dark yellow and even some black in there for like the really recessed parts. Because this is rock and sand and it is being blocked by this giant scorpion. And so we should get a lot of cool color variation. And by just smearing on the paint like this, you don't have to worry about trying to be perfect because you've already done all the prep work. You did the undercoat, you did the wash. So now you just come through here and just do this kind of rough and quick and just let the paint go where it will and let it settle where it wants. There we go. Look at this. Look how cool this is looking. And you can see the top of its joints and the top of the tail is really wanting to shine. I'm going to do a little bit more on the sand and then we'll hit the beetle and then we'll take a look at it where they stand. So you can see on the chest of the bird and on the crown above the eyes, on the tips of the wings, it's really colorful. And then other places it is shadowy. Having trouble getting it to see down the back of its neck there at the top edge of those feathers. So yeah, it's looking really good. I'm going to dot some eyes on these critters, let them dry, and I think they'll be ready to prime. And I think we might just call these done. Because I'm afraid if I mess with them too much more, I'm just going to mess them up and not like the results I have. For the Phoenix, if you can see, I decided to go with a couple of coats, 2 or 3 coats of yellow paint to really give it some fiery eyes. But these guys, just so that they would stand out nice and visibly, okay, I went ahead and just gave them some white eyes, even though it might look a little silly, but it shows up well. And I think I am done with these guys. I think we're going to call that there. So we'll let these finish drying so I can get some clear coats on them, and we'll call them done. And all 3 of these figures, now they are mostly red and yellows and blacks, and then this one's got some oranges, and they've got some variations. But since they were all 3 mainly, they were from the same tree, the red pyramid tree, so their color schemes were very similar. I did all 3 of these in just over 3 hours. That's not counting the primer and the rest time on the paints, just the painting part. So that's not too bad, considering I was trying out some new stuff. So yeah, that's the red pyramid, and that's those done. Now this guy is supposed to be like a necromancer, so I definitely want the sand around him to look a little deader. So I went with a brown undercoat, and then I've got some just base gray on like the skin parts, and then I did gray on the snake. I'm going to do the blue sand a little darker as well, because they're not on fire, they're not as brightly colored. And then the elephant, I've got just a gray coat on his skin, letting all this dry, and on the Sphinx. And now I'm going to go back once they dry and do some light blue, well, after I do the wash. And I was looking up online, and there are pictures of like actual Sphinx cats, and they do have a blue tinge to them as well as blue elephants. And so got a little bit of too much pooling of paint right there. I'll get that taken care of, but I'm going to let these dry, and we will Wrong brush. Come back and take a look at them. But according to the video I watched, all of this took about 25 minutes. And the hardest part is getting up under the belly of the elephant and stuff like that. And then I've got one leg here I need to finish up. Spent about another 10 minutes. And I did the saddle and the top of his staff in purple. And I did the Sphinx headdress. I'm going to do the base coat in purple, and we will add color to it later. And as well as the elephant headdress, the wrappings, and I think the seat up there, the canopy with the soldiers, is going to be the hardest thing to do and make look good and not mess up anything else. So we will see how it goes. But the main base coats are done. I got sick and had to go to the doctor, get some medicine. So these have been setting for a few days, and I'm not exactly sure what I was wanting to do, but I had an idea of doing this on the snake's underbelly. There are some ridge lines along the side there. This is not the bright yellow, this is the yellow ochre, so it has a slightly muted look to it, which is what I want. I don't want it to be super bright. I want to save that for its back, its surface skin. Get up under there best I can toward the rock. I've got a couple of ideas on the others, but I had to start over. Fresh wet palette, fresh paint. Had to sit down and try to figure out what I was doing. So we'll let that dry, and I think we might call his undercoat done. I don't know if I want to do anything else with the little minifigure on his back. I might come back and put like another thin coat on this once it dries, but I mean, that's just the undercoat. My wash has been setting, and I don't know if it held up or how much it's broken down, so I'm going to add a little black, just like a drop. And then I'll add a little more of the isopropyl. And we'll see if it's going to hold up and work, or if I need to just start over. We'll give this a good mix, because I don't think this little container is going to seal quite as well as like the screw-on tops of those droppers. So let's take something that's easy to repaint if we need to. Let me get, in case I've got a little too much on there, let me just dab the brush. And then let's see here. It seems to be doing okay. Okay. All right. It's not bad. It's not bad. So let's get a little bit of this everywhere. You want it to run down, but you don't want it to pool on the top surfaces. So if you need to, just keep brushing it down, and it will catch itself where it needs to in the designs of the mini, in the little grooves. There we go. And you can see it hasn't finished drying, but you're already getting around the muscles and stuff like that. There on the belly, along the face, you can see the eyes and mouth a little better. So I don't like that big splotch right there on the belly. That is a imperfection on the mold of the Mini. So it looks like a little crack or seam. Huh. Alright, so I'm going to give all of these a quick wash. So I wasn't super pleased with the way the belly of the snake was looking. It was a little too much of the wash. So I'm just going to lightly come in here and just on some of the high places try to rub a little bit of this yellow, like down its belly, down the curve, down the most prominent point. There we go. And then maybe right over here there's a little too much black. And then spread that out so it doesn't look too much like a perfect little line. There we go. That looks a little better. That gives it a little bit of texture without being solid black. But we will see. And this here I'm definitely going to really pop out. But we've let those washes set. And what I have here for my first highlight coat of the 3 blue minis, I have 1 drop of gray and 2 drops of sky blue. And I'm going to mix that up. There we go. And you can see as you mix it and thin it, it's getting a steel colored, a blue-gray. And so right down the top of its back onto the side. So hopefully we can get 3 or 4 color variations. Now, one of the inspirations I took, if you look up a sand snake and look at some pictures, or if you get a desert king snake, they have this really bright bluish color, but they also have like a design on their back, and there's no way I'm going to be able to do like a diamond pattern or anything and have it turn out okay. So I'm just going to focus on a solid bluish color. Now if you notice, he's curved, so this is in the sun, this is not, but this part is. So the highlight will shift. There we go. Do that on this side. So once we get to here, we want to shift toward the front of the snake, toward its belly. There we go. And then we can touch up those spots where didn't like the way the wash did. And then we're going to come in here, put some down the rest of his body, and just work that out. In this coat, you can be a little generous with the area that you're covering, because I'm going to come back in with an even lighter blue, just straight up sky blue. It'll look a little magical like. These are like magic summoned creatures that will fight for you. And they are in the blue tech tree. So I want to make sure that they stand out with some nice blue. So I am going to really widen this part and then come in really thin with the next highlight color. But I want to show you what I'm doing and what I'm thinking, because even just that, you can already see a transition in the grays. So I like the way that color was looking. I ended up doing almost all of the snake in that color, as well as the elephant. And I tried to leave some dark spots here and there, in the grooves. And now I'm going to go straight up sky blue to really hit the accents and make it look magical. And yes, it's going to look weird, but I think that when it's done, it's going to just be amazing. It's going to be a truly blue elephant. And if I don't like it, I can come back in and add some more gray to the paint and really get something in between. But I want to get a good coat of this on everywhere and let it dry out and see how it looks. Who knows, I may even repaint the whole elephant this blue. But now I'm losing all of my, I'm losing all of my wash color. Well, I will be. I can't decide what I like. Oh, that's a shame. Yeah, I think we're going to go blue on the elephant just like I am on the snake. Yeah, that just looks cool. So I got several coats of highlight blue on all of the models, but I gotta say this yellow does not want to cover. I've got 3 or 4 coats on that. Snake is looking pretty good. I may be about done with it. I still want to give it a few more highlights. The Sphinx, I'm just going really simple. I may come back in, put a little bit more on its face to really get its eyebrows and nose to stand out, but it's looking good. And then I went real simple with the Necromancer. I did like a white dry brush on its cloth and its armor. And that turned out pretty cool. And then I tried to make his bones stand out. And let me see if I can get his face and let you see. Yeah, you can see like his cheekbones and his eyes, and yeah, that's looking pretty cool. So I think I might just call him done. I don't know if I want to lighten the sand up anymore. I may try a little bit just to lighten the sand up a little bit. But I don't know, that looks pretty good. That looks pretty cool because he's supposed to be a necromancer and that looks kind of gross and sickly. So maybe we'll leave it like that. You can barely see I got some green, acid green in there on his tongue. And these did not turn out quite as well as I would have liked. They're really not getting that shimmer on top as I want it. But I'm afraid to mess with them anymore. I'm afraid I'm going to undo any of the good work I've done. And maybe it's partly because I've been sick, but I think I'm going to call these good enough. And another reason that I want to call them good enough and that I did not start painting these much earlier, like years ago, is because now I need to do the armies, and look how small they are. But that'll be for another day and another time.